ever get totally captivated by
Oh,
something? Like, you just have to experience it, even if it kind of scares you.
Oh, yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Well, that's what happened to Naydene Nutley, the author of A Girl in a Mountain.
The memoir.
Yep. Came out in 2021. She takes us back to the 1950s and her 3 attempts to summit Mount Rainier, and let me tell you, it is a wild ride.
Oh, I bet I've heard some stories about Rainier back then.
We're talking near-death experiences, daring rescues, even a watermelon summit feast gone wrong.
Wait, a watermelon? What?
Oh, we'll get to that.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
It's amazing how different climbing Rainier was back then.
Yeah, the gear, the knowledge about the mountain people really were pushing the limits.
Right. So let's dive into Nadine's first climb. This is 1957.
Okay.
She's 19, working at Paradise Inn, and totally mesmerized by Rainier, you know?
Yeah, that youthful enthusiasm when you think anything's possible.
Exactly. She's doing solo hikes to Camp Muir, just soaking it all in.
Oh, a pilgrimage almost.
But even back then, climbing Rainier wasn't a walk in the park. You needed experience.
For sure it was, and still is, a serious undertaking.
She ends up joining a group led by Gary Rose and Dee Molinar.
Those are some big names in the climbing world back then.
2 very experienced climbers. They set off super early in the morning, 3 ropes of 4.
Classic way to do it back then. Spread the risk.
And they start making their way across the Cowlitz and Ingramham glaciers.
That's where you really start to see the power of the mountain. Those glaciers are huge.
Naydene describes these massive ice towers called seracs, beautiful but so unstable.
Like giant swords hanging overhead, they can calve off without warning.
It's like the mountain's beauty and danger are inseparable, right?
Absolutely, 2 sides of the same coin.
They keep climbing and things start to go south at this place called Disappointment Cleaver.
That name doesn't sound promising.
Right. The weather warms up, the snow starts sticking to their crampons, making them useless.
So they're basically walking on ice with slippery shoes.
And then it happens, the crevasse fall.
Oh no.
Naydene describes this sudden cracking sound, and then she's falling into this icy abyss.
It must have felt like the world was ending.
One of her companions, Bill, is badly injured.
So they're dealing with a medical emergency on top of everything else.
Gary Rose really steps up. He takes charge, keeps everyone calm, and they start working to help Bill.
What were their options in that situation? I mean, they're in a crevasse.
They're trying to signal for help with a mirror. They're sharing their limited food, trying to keep Bill's spirits up.
A desperate situation.
It's a long wait for rescue. They can see Coast Guard planes overhead, but the weather's too bad for them to land.
I can't even imagine that feeling, so close to help, but unable to reach it.
And tragically, Bill passes away before help arrives.
It's a stark reminder of how unforgiving the mountain can be.
The descent back down is just as tough. Nadine's terrified.
Understandably so, after what she'd just been through.
But she manages to overcome it. There's this moment where she almost falls, but stops herself using her ice axe.
An ice axe arrest. Wow, talk about a high-pressure situation.
Talk about a baptism by fire.
That first climb really sets the stage for the rest of her story, doesn't it?
For sure, it shows the dangers, but also the incredible resilience it takes to face them.
And you can see how this tragedy really impacted Naydene. It set the stage for her determination to climb again, even after experiencing such a loss. It's amazing she didn't let that experience totally break her.
Right. It's like she needed to confront the mountain again. Maybe even honor Bill, in a way.
Makes sense. And this time she gets a letter from Marcel Schuster.
Schuster the guide.
Yep. Highly experienced climber offers to guide her up Rainier.
Wow. So he knew about her first climb.
Oh yeah, he recognized her determination, but also knew the risks they spent the summer training together.
Getting her ready.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Pushing her limits on these tough hikes. There's this one part where she describes hearing these strange sounds coming from the glacier.
What kind of sounds?
She describes them as almost organ-like, deep and resonating.
Kind of creepy.
It's a reminder that glaciers are constantly moving, shifting under immense pressure.
So for this climb, Marcel chooses the Tahoma Glacier route.
Yeah, notoriously difficult, known for its steep ice and challenging terrain.
He really wanted to test her.
Oh yeah, push her boundaries, help her develop her technical skills.
Yeah.
And the team they assemble is pretty incredible.
What do you mean?
German, Swiss, American, former enemies from the war, all united by their love for the mountain.
That's pretty powerful, the way nature can transcend those kinds of divisions.
Absolutely. The ascent is grueling steep ice. They needed those super grippy 12-point crampons, constant belaying for safety.
So they're roped together the whole time.
Exactly. As they climb higher, fatigue sets in, and they have to make a decision.
To turn back.
Nadine's pushing hard, begging Marcel to keep going, and against his better judgment, he agrees.
Summit fever.
Classic case of it, that overwhelming desire to reach the top, even when it's not the smartest move.
So they make it to the summit?
They do at sunset, exhausted but triumphant.
Mm-hmm.
But, reaching the summit is only half the battle.
Getting down can be even harder.
Especially in this case, while they're waiting for Marcel to find the descent route, Naydene gets dangerously wet.
Wet how? It's freezing up there.
From a fumarole.
Oh, what?
A fumarole, basically a steam vent in the Earth's crust, releases superheated gases.
The volcano.
Right.
Right.
And at that altitude, getting wet can be deadly. Hypothermia sets in fast.
So they're stuck on the summit.
Forced to bivouac, spend the night exposed. Imagine the misery burning from the fumaroles, freezing from the cold rockfalls all around.
Sounds terrifying.
It is one of the worst nights of her life. Naydene says Marcel actually freezes his clothes solid to try and create some insulation.
That's desperate.
It was a last-ditch effort to prevent hypothermia, but it wasn't enough. Naydene collapses completely spent.
What happens then?
Marcel sees she's in no condition to move, so he makes the agonizing decision to descend alone to get help.
Wow, leaving her behind.
He knew time was running out. His solo descent triggers this massive rescue effort. Her family rushes to the mountain. Experienced climbers start assembling teams.
And what's Naydene doing this whole time?
She actually tries to descend on her own a few times, but realizes how dangerous it is.
She could easily fall.
Exactly. Then she sees a plane circling overhead, a Navy rescue plane.
A glimmer of hope.
They can't land, but they do an airdrop, warm clothes, a sleeping bag, food, all the essentials.
Wow, talk about a lifeline.
There's even this funny moment where the pilot radios down saying he sees 2 men in the crater.
2 men.
It was just Naydene. She was changing clothes when the pilot flew over.
Ha. A bit of comic relief in a really tense situation.
One of the climbers on the rescue team was Gil Blinn.
The Gil Blinn, the speed record holder.
The one and only. He and his partner, Dick McGowan, actually set a new speed record that day.
Driven by the urgency of the situation.
Finding Naydene alive was a huge relief. They shared a sleeping bag for warmth, ate some frosted peaches for breakfast, and then started the long descent.
Quite the breakfast.
Right. And it wasn't easy roped together, navigating treacherous terrain. A true test of endurance.
And the rescue made headlines.
Oh yeah, it became a media sensation. Naydene's reunited with her family, but also faces public scrutiny. Some people criticized her choices.
It's easy to judge from afar, isn't it?
But Naydene focuses on the positive. She expresses deep gratitude for her rescuers. Especially Marcel. They actually remain lifelong friends.
Wow, that's powerful.
Her second climb really highlights the mountain's power, the importance of respecting its limits, and the incredible strength of the human spirit.
Okay, so she's faced tragedy. She's stared death in the face, not once, but twice on Rainier.
You'd think that would be enough.
Right. You'd think she'd never go near that mountain again.
But then comes her third climb. This is the early 1960s, and it shows a different side of Naydene.
How so?
It's less about conquering the mountain and more about appreciating its beauty, finding a kind of peace.
Makes sense. She's older now, more mature.
Exactly. This time she's invited to climb by some fellow grad students who thankfully have no idea about her past experiences.
Oh, wow. That could have been awkward.
Right. They decide to try the Emmons Glacier route. And get this, Bob McCall agrees to lead them.
Her old instructor.
The one from her first climb. He's still willing to guide her after everything that happened.
Something says a lot about his character.
It does. Their climb starts with a night at Storbo Camp. Then they take this side trip to Interglacier.
What's at Interglacier?
There's an old mine there. They collect some colorful ore samples. They even encounter those rock coffins at Steamboat Prow.
Huh, what?
Rock coffins. They're these makeshift shelters built by climbers to protect themselves from the wind.
Sounds cozy.
Not exactly,
Mm-hmm.
but they serve their purpose. And of course, no mountain adventure would be complete without a few mishaps.
Oh, I bet what happened this time.
Naydene decides to use tang instead of sugar in her cereal one morning.
Oh no, that's a recipe for disaster at high altitude.
Let's just say it didn't agree with her.
Poor thing. So the ascent continues, 2 ropes of 4, Bob McCall leading the way, but the Emmons Glacier is known for its massive crevasses.
Some of the biggest on the mountain.
And it proves too much for the first rope. They turn back. One of the climber's sons was watching from sunrise and described seeing grown men crying as they retreated.
Wow. It's a reminder that even experienced climbers have their limits. Knowing when to turn back is crucial.
Smart move. But Naydene's rope keeps going. They're navigating these treacherous crevasses. The ice is getting steeper, and then they start noticing these red marks in the snow.
Uh-oh, this is where the watermelon comes
I
in.
knew it. What happened?
Gary, who would later become Nadine's husband, had brought a full-size watermelon for a summit feast.
Oh, watermelon on a mountain.
Right. Well, the pressure change at high altitude caused it to explode, leaving this trail of red juice in their wake.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious and kind of a mess.
They finally reach the summit, share the remains of the exploded watermelon, and even run into a friend who climbed up via the Muir route.
A summit reunion, how cool.
And this time, the descent is peaceful. They make it back to their car, drive home, and are tucked in bed by 10 p.m.
What a contrast to her previous 2 climbs.
Nadine's third climb really shows how experienced preparation and a bit of luck can turn a dangerous adventure into a truly rewarding one.
It's amazing how her perspective on the mountain changed over time, from that youthful romanticism to a deep respect for its power. She ultimately finds peace and a sense of accomplishment.
Her story reminds us that challenges shape us in profound ways. It's not about reaching the summit, but about the journey itself, the lessons learned, and the resilience we discover within ourselves.
It makes you think about those times in your own life when you faced setbacks, those moments where you had to dig deep and find that extra strength.
We all have that potential for resilience within us. Nadine's story is a powerful reminder of that.
So there you have it, 3 attempts, 3 very different experiences on Mount Rainier. If you want to hear the full story, check out A Girl in a Mountain. It's a truly remarkable memoir. And until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and remember, adventure is out there waiting for you. Just maybe pack a few extra snacks and skip the watermelon.
Uh-huh. Sound advice.